Who was the Reo? Before the Soul Society was created by His Magnificence, what did the world look like? In the past, a boy from the nobility asked his father this.
What is the Soul King?
The Soul King is, in practical terms, the linchpin of the world, the cornerstone that controls the universal flow of the Kanpaku. If the Soul King were to disappear, the three worlds, the Soul Society, the world of the living, and Hueco Mundo, would likely crumble immediately.
In that case, what was the world like in the time before the linchpin was established?
That time, or any history prior to the Soul King's birth, did not exist. Even considering such a thing is not allowed.
The boy pretended to accept that answer. Even in his youth, the boy's instincts told him that adults spoke in lies. Among the 5 great noble clans, the Tsunayashiros were confident that they held particular power. Though he was a member of that clan, the boy looked down upon his own family as it continued to indulge in pretentious luxury. They were evil, simply despicable. Many moons passed as he forced himself to temper the flames within his heart, and a crude laugh slipped from the mouth of the boy, now a man. In the Tsunayashiro's innermost library, this man who had just solved a ciphertext carved into a stone monument felt certain. His family truly was made up of hopeless villains not even worth despising.
Can this really be? It is just as I imagined. No, it's even more than I imagined.
After he had read the totality of the ciphertext, he sliced it apart with his own zanpakuto.
I see. So these are the dark innards of the Soul Society and of the Tsunayashiro family. I never would have thought they would leave behind a monument like this. Was it so they would not forget their own sin? No, they likely left it behind as some sort of threat to the other clans. Oh yes, it is just as I expected. It is proof that the world works just the way I had guessed.
The world was rotten, just as he had suspected, and it was less salvageable than anyone could have imagined. The man then became thankful for the world, thankful for the million-year history of the Soul Society, thankful for the Tsunayashiros that had sustained the petty evil of their bloodline. They had done well, creating a world filled with deceit.
This is truly amazing! Yes, I am grateful! I am grateful for my distant ancestors' sins. Because they hid it, I am now able to dedicate my entire joy to the great malice that has been left unpurified for 1,000,000 years! If the world is duplicitous, then I should be duplicitous as well. The Tsunayashiro family, which exists for nothing more than the sake of being despicable, ends here. What meaning is there in an evil that exists only to be looked down upon and despised? It was all a fraud. What am I to do if I am unable to go along with the lie? I will sing to the tune of my passions as my heart desires. I may be destroyed by the Quincy's, squashed by the Hollows, or sabotaged by my own hubris. If the final days of the Soul Society are upon us, then I vow to bring about evil until that day. There will be no necessary evils, no. My malice will be entirely unnecessary. As I laugh at this world, what a joyous day! The Soul Society's history has validated that my malice is just.
The man left the hidden archives behind, his smile something wicked. He had reaffirmed himself. He had decided that his appetite, his malice, and his sadism were sanctioned. No trigger or tragedy had turned the man evil. He would tyrannize others entirely of his own volition. His true self hadn't changed, he had simply been given different options. Current day, Karakura Town. The Squad 9 lieutenant flinched, wide-eyed, at the electric guitar that had appeared before his eyes.
Are you serious, Mr. Urahara?
Is this actually from the legendary Galmuna Ecstasy?
Yeah, isn't it a beauty? I was reminded of it when Mr. Sato mentioned that you were interested in it, so I did what I could to get my hands on it.
I never could have imagined I'd be able to hold it in my own hands like this. Is it the real deal?
Yes, that is a replica of a replica of a replica, but that just means it's gone full circle and has its own unique charm. In other words, it's a genuine, bona fide reproduction.
Doesn't that just mean it's a plain old replica?
Now that's just amateur thinking.
Huh?
It just means that many artisans have given the original prototype a tune-up. That guitar is a mirror reflecting many souls. It's a replica that surpassed mere imitation. Occasionally, this process births something original onto itself that transcends even the genuine article. Through human workmanship, the legend reached the promised land. Can't you feel those vibes just oozing from it?
I think so.
Just take a look at the way it shines, even 30 whole years after the legend. Look at these marks scratched on the back that prove the event. Doesn't it seem fresh, like it all happened just yesterday? An original simply wouldn't compare to this. The whole reason it's such a once-in-a-lifetime marvel is because it's fresh off the line.
Well, when you put it that way...
What do you think? How about I give you a discount right now and set the price to just 3 months' worth of your salary?
Isn't that kind of pricey?
Well, that's because I crafted this with my own 2 hands. I have to figure that labor into the price. This guitar can even function as a zanpaku toe sheath.
So it's got practical use. Well, but... would you also... issue me a loan?
Come on, that guy's getting ripped off again.
He's such a good customer.
Karakura-chan, Mitsumiya. Hisagi had just deliberately read the entirety of a pre-prepared manuscript to Kisuke Urahara, who covered his mouth with a folding fan. So, I was thinking that's how I introduced you, Mr. Urahara.
Oh, Mr. Hisagi. I'm impressed you could keep a straight face reading that all the way to the end.
Huh? Was there something that shouldn't be in it?
No, I wouldn't say that, but don't you think that introduction is aimed more for people in the world of the living? I'm not sure the people over there would have much interest in Karakura-town.
The article is a little long, so I think we'll need to cut some of it when we run it in the magazine.
Well, of course you would need to. Oh, but I'm tickled by the phrase enigmatic candy shop, so maybe you could just leave that in there. One way you could go is to pair it with the text mystery market. Also, you can describe me as a shady guy rather than mysterious. So, Isshin Shiba once met a human woman. Seems like you're being pretty discreet about this too.
Yeah, I didn't know how far I could delve into that. Well, it doesn't directly relate to you, so I think we'll probably cut it. Well, putting that aside, I'd like to thank you for your cooperation today. Hisagi bowed his head after pulling out an interview recorder that made use of a spirit recording bug. As he did so, Urahara snapped his fan close and handed him a sheath of papers he pulled from his chest pocket.
Well, I get it. I've got the answers to everything you wanted to ask, compiled right here.
Huh? But you didn't have to go out of your way to... The secret formula. How to make Urahara Shoten's original candy, the Hollow Hollow Hollow. First, combine a massive amount of sugar and salt in equal quantities and knead it together with a good dose of honey. This is the most important point. When you add a ton of vegetable oil and butter at this moment, it'll transform the flavor. You'll be crying yourself, hollow, hollow, hollow.
Wow, I didn't think you'd actually read that out loud.
But this is just some candy recipe. And it seems ridiculously unhealthy, too.
Yes, it's our secret trick. We can't let it out of the shop, primarily because of those issues with health and flavor.
You should have just kept this thing a secret. Well, I might be able to use this for news content at some point, so I'll accept it anyway.
Oh, so that's what you're going to do. Well, you can have it, but you really shouldn't try it yourself. I'd recommend letting Mr. Hirako try it, since he'll complain about it no matter what it tastes like.
Well, if you're headed for Kisuke's, you'll probably see Hiyori. If you do, make sure to tease her for me.
Come to think of it, does Miss Sarugaki live around here?
You mean Hiyori? I think she's been working part-time for the neighborhood odd job service lately. I'm guessing that if you take a march around town, you'll spot her spirit ribbon.
I see. Thank you. Well, wait a sec. I might be able to interview her to get a different point of view.
But, to be serious, there isn't anything I can tell you about the war at this point.
What are you talking about? Because of the pill you made that covered us in hollow reishi, they couldn't steal our bankai. And we were able to get into the Ryokyu because of you too.
Yes, that's why I have nothing else to talk about beyond those facts. I just happened to use a preventative measure I'd cooked up when the moment presented itself. That's all. Actually, I'm the one who should be grateful for being put into a position where I could implement my plan.
Mr. Urahara. No. Former Chief of the Department of Research and Development, I came today to expose your past.
Please don't show me your scary side all of a sudden like that, Mr. Hisagi. What'll you do if Jinta bursts out crying from where he's watching from behind the sliding door? He might start wetting his bed again.
I wouldn't cry, and I haven't ever wet my bed ever, you crummy shopkeep. I'll pummel you!
Jinta Hanakari tried to leap right into the room, but a brawny arm seized him around the neck and he ended up writhing in midair, immobilized.
Ow, 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 Tessai, you little...
You cannot threaten others with violence, Mr. Jinta, especially not in front of a guest.
As Tessai held up the struggling Jinta, Ururu peeked out from behind him and began to tickle Jinta's feet with her hair.
Ururu, you better not be doing that to my feet again. I'll kill you.
I'm sorry. Jinta's body went through a growth spurt, but the same can't be said for his brain.
I don't mind.
Mr. Kisuke, I'm going to get the bulk purchases done.
Yes, thank you. We've got to stock up on 500 kilograms of bouncy balls, so please take Jinta with you to carry them all.
Oh, what the heck is that? 500 kilograms is just comical, no matter.
Yes, if it's so comical, then please laugh your heart out as you do your work. Give it your all.
Jinta was carried away before he could get his mouth to form a decent reply, and was dragged out of the shop. I'm not sure how to put this, but they seem like they've simultaneously changed and stayed just the same. Though, when I first saw them, it seemed like that Jinta kid was the one teasing the girl.
Well, this is when they're going through growth spurts, and Ururu is actually 3 years older. He used to make fun of her for having hair like a cockroach, so do you think tickling him with her hair is revenge for that?
I'm not sure there's any point in asking me that. Soul Reaper or human, I just don't get the way kids think. Though, their spirit ribbons feel unique.
So, what do you think those two are?
Gikongan. I suppose that's too obvious though, right?
Well, the temporary souls in Gikongan generally don't grow. Though they will learn to a certain extent from the user's position and commands, there are limits as far as that's concerned.
You said they generally don't grow, so does that mean there are exceptions? For example, a mod soul?
Oh my, you're sharper than you seem, Mr. Hisagi. But that doesn't mean you're right.
Well, other than that, the only thing I can think of is that there's something like Miss Nemu from Captain Kurotsuchi's. Urahara opened his fan in front of Hisagi's mouth to stop him from continuing.
Whoa there! If you say something like that, Mr. Kurotsuchi will snatch them away for his experiments. Their insides are quite different from Nemu's. I'm sure that Mr. Kurotsuchi already knows that and is imagining my bitter expression as he dances for joy about Nemu's growth, thinking I've surpassed Kisuke Urahara. Well, I guess you wouldn't actually be able to imagine that.
Why is that?
That's because I've never genuinely been bitter in front of Mr. Kurotsuchi.
The Soul Society, Department of Research and Development. Mayuri Kurotsuchi abruptly paused at his work.
What's wrong, Captain?
I suppose you could say something foreboding is bugging me. The quantum spirit bugs I inserted into my cerebellum are throbbing. I'm sure it's just the jealous rambling of some banal scientist going on illogically.
Mayuri turned his eyes to the image receiver in front of him. What was displayed appeared to be a desolate village from the Rukongai seen from high above.
That's pretty precise, though I should expect that from you. But why'd you go through all that trouble to devote yourself to building a surveillance system from scratch? It would have been a heck of a lot easier to build it on top of the visual department system. Actually, wouldn't that have been more efficient?
The visual department was the general umbrella organization that managed the visual surveillance system that spread over various places in the Soul Society and the world of the living. Its ties ran deep with the Department of Research and Development, and by joining forces, they could access all types of intelligence from various sources and use that as a basis for analyzing affairs.
We're going to cut the visual department out of the Department of Research and Development's work.
Huh?
Though we'll continue to pretend we're using it like we have been all along. The data coming from them is less reliable than a drunkard's gibberish.
Well, if it's about reliability, I don't even have to think twice to know the system you created is better. Did something happen?
Blind faith is a poison that weakens performance. Please, just say, though we put together our flawed minds and inspected it, the mechanism that Mayuri Kurotsuchi created was undoubtedly better in every way.
Is it because of that whole incident with the aristocracy interfering with the surveillance system?
Just the other day, the Soul Society's surveillance system had picked up an odd spiritual pressure, but one of the 4 great noble clans had directly notified them that the individual responsible was not to be interfered with.
They so blithely attempted to joke about it. Really now, they must be idiots if they think that just because they're backed by 1 million years of history, they can manipulate those who are far more resourceful on a whim.
I'm sure the visual department will have a heck of a time being on the receiving end of this.
What are you saying? There are no whims here. They're in on it.
Excuse me?
Ah, I see. You never had any interest in the constitutional government. You should dedicate this to mind regardless. In order to continue with your research undisturbed, you need the skills to lead the incompetent around by the nose. Really now, though it's required for the sake of a functioning society, it is an obstacle to the free implementation of my ideas. And that just shows that the laws are still far from maturity. Right now, decorative aristocrats are taking turns operating the visual department, but it was established and is managed behind the scenes by the 4 great noble clans.
That's the first I've heard about that.
If I were to be even more precise, there is one family in particular among the 4 that is involved. If we call the Shihoin family the defenders of the realm because they have the role of managing the weapons that the Ryo supposedly bestowed on them, then the Tsunayashiros are the ones managing the past itself. Before the establishment of the Underground Assembly Hall's great archive for gathering and accumulating information, the Tsunayashiro family were the centuries recording all of history. If you're researching a specific bit of history, you're required to get their permission to research the historic remnants, and passages for publication are heavily censored. I have also heard that the historians' whereabouts have become unknown in a considerable number of cases. I believe that striving throughout your life until you get results is itself a talent. I don't exactly intend to ridicule those historians, but if they had really wanted to pursue the truth, they should have prepared numerous countermeasures. To the degree that it's insufficient, working on the Soul Society's million-year history or such like is a troublesome barrier that stands in front of the work of us researchers. Then again, as I said earlier, such a barrier means nothing to a clever person such as myself.
Mayuri turned his eyes to a specific place on the monitor.
There, I found our guinea pigs. I'm heading out to the experiment without a moment's delay. I will leave analyzing the data to you, Akon.
Captain, at least tell me the ending to your lecture. Why are we separating from the visual department?
It's simple. The man who has the slacker job of managing the visual department, a man who was ridiculed by the aristocrats he came from, killed all the leaders of his family and became the head of the Tsunayashiros. And I have come to the conclusion that this man will hinder my research. That's all there is to it.
The Rukongai. On a road at the outskirts of the Rukongai, Kugo Ginjo was heading to the Shiba residence where he was freeloading. He put his hand to his pendant with an instinctive motion.
We're being watched.
An enemy?
I can think of several people it could be.
It's just a hunch, though. I feel something unpleasant in the air. Like back when I felt something off about the combat pass.
Their attacker did not give them a chance to mull things over. A flash of lightning came flying down the horizon. To be more accurate, a single arrow entirely covered in electricity.
Hey, you freaking serious?
Ginjo used the large sword that had appeared in his hand to cast away the lightning, causing it to disperse. He readied his sword in the direction from which the lightning had come.
Ha! That's pretty slow for lightning. Was that supposed to be your most lethal move or something?
Lightning is far from the speed of light, as people mistakenly believe it to be. Then again, atmospheric pressure and the humidity in the air influence its speed and can easily affect the change. Really, speed is so fickle compared to the flow of time.
No one asked you for your weird trivia.
It's a blind assumption to believe that the flow of time is fixed, though. And this isn't just some scientist's theory. We all know about how the Dangai messes with time, and about Yukio's fast forward.
You think that way, Mr. Tsukishima, because you simply have not yet entrusted yourself to the god of time in a true sense. Relativity and playing with space-time is meaningless compared to the flow of subjective time that dwells within you.
Okay, again, what the hell are you two babbling about?
Ginjo turned to glance at the two of them, but smiled once he saw that during their conversation, Giriko had picked up his pocket watch, and Tsukishima had put his hand on his bookmark.
Well, they're not coming to attack us. In addition to being dull, it might be slow to recharge. That technique wasn't really anything to write home about.
Who exactly are you calling dull?
A spiritual pressure swelled from the middle of Ginjo's group, and a woman appeared abruptly, almost as though she had oozed out from the shadows. She had white plasma and traces of experimentation all over her body.
In that case, I'll kill you quickly.
A small bolt of lightning stretched into the sky from her raised hand, and instead of an arrow, a genuine flash of lightning roared as it came down on Ginjo and the others. Karakura Town, Urahara shop. Now then, since you cleared everyone out, can I assume you'll give me some answers?
Well, who knows? I may simply just try to evade your questions in a more flamboyant way.
Please rest assured that no matter how much you just hear, I'll make sure every person who reads the Serite Bulletin will think Kisuke Urahara is a hero.
Isn't that more or less fraud? Actually, it appears the person hiding their sentiments and true thoughts here is you rather than me. Did something make you panic? You're making the same face as a trainee coming across their first hollow right now, Mr. Hisagi.
What? That's just... from here on, half of this is relevant to my work, but the other half is relevant to my own interests.
I see. I've never made a distinction between personal and business matters, so I don't mind. Just give it to me straight.
Actually, before I put this interview into the articles, I'm going to have to publish a special edition.
About the unveiling of the new Tsunayashiro family's head.
Huh? You already knew?
Nah, I just happened to hear from Miss Yorichi that the head of the house was changing. She said it seems the new head of the 4 great noble clans is quite the overachiever or something.
So you know something about him then? About Tokinada Tsunayashiro?
Well, it's not as though I've had direct contact with him, and I think Mr. Kyoraku would actually know a lot more about him. I know about the ties between Mr. Tsunayashiro and Mr. Tosen, but it happened a long time before I became a captain. Well, I can give it a guess, but making speculations about a person's past is pretty rude.
I'm having a hard time being convinced about his past, too. But I didn't want to ask about that. I just ran into a Soul Reaper kid who was involved with him, and that kid just didn't seem normal. So I'm looking for a lead about who they could have been.
A Soul Reaper kid, you say?
Yes, and I don't mean like Captain Hitsugaya either. This kid acted like a regular kid mentally.
Oh. Don't you think it's unwise to bring up Captain Hitsugaya as your example?
Please don't tell him.
Oh, sorry. Please, go on. No need to get distracted. I'm quite fine with you just telling me what you saw as your eyes perceived it.
Hisagi talked about what Kyoraku had told him about the Tsunayashiro family, about how he had departed to the clinic that was run by Seinosuke, and about how he had met Hikone Ubuginu.
So Mr. Seinosuke Yamada, huh? Yes, I knew him from when I was back on that side. He was the Squad 4 lieutenant.
To be honest, I've never seen Kaido like that before. Hanataro also has amazing abilities, so him being amazing as well makes sense, though he doesn't have the same bearing, or speak like his brother at all.
That man certainly has remarkable skills. He might even be the same type of person as me. It's in his nature that he can't feel satisfied unless he's prepared countless strategies in order to reach his goals. However, I did things with my own life in mind. In other words, in order to win a battle. Mr. Seinosuke was different from me in that he did things only for the sake of the patient in front of him.
So he's a model doctor.
But when it came to anything other than helping the injured and sick before his eyes, his ethics were pretty screwed up. He was always getting into quarrels with Miss Unohana over that, but those were only superficial disagreements. They really did have respect for each other. I think you'd find that the veteran soldiers still trust him.
Being acknowledged by Unohana is nothing to scoff at.
Having said that, it was true that he was deliberately mean, and the Squad 4 soldiers' apprehension was nothing to scoff at either. After Mr. Seinosuke was headhunted, I heard that the head captain had this in mind when he appointed a more approachable kid as lieutenant. I was already over here by then, though. So, you said you felt an odd spiritual pressure coming from this Hikone kid?
Yes, I did. But I wasn't sure whether you'd believe me after what I told you. I was so flustered back then I couldn't really tell for sure, but now that I think back on it, it felt like there was something mixed in with their Soul Reaper spiritual pressure.
Something was mixed in there?
It felt like I felt hints of hollow and normal human in there, and even something like Quincy. And to begin with, they came out of a hole like a Garganta rather than a Senkaimon. It was kind of like they were a ridiculous patchwork of things, and even Hanataro was saying the treatment was difficult because of it.
I see. So that's how far the Tsunayashiro family is willing to go. But the hollow element wasn't supposed to be a requirement, so... Or maybe they were trying to achieve something else?
Huh?
Oh, sorry about that. Just got lost in my thoughts.
Not at all. It was my first time feeling a spiritual pressure like that, and I was so bewildered that
Are you sure it's correct to say it was your first time feeling something like that?
Huh?
You can't think of anything at all? When it comes to people with diverse spiritual pressures mixed together, I believe there's someone you're already aware of.
Ichigo Kurosaki.
Yes. Though in general his spiritual pressure is fundamentally made up of human and Soul Reaper, there are hollow and Quincy factors hidden deep within him. You know that as well, don't you?
And now that you mention it, Yamada was saying the kid was just like Ichigo. But he meant it in a different way. But what does that mean? I heard that Kurosaki has 2 sisters, but it's not like Hikone is one of them. The issue isn't whether or not they're similar. There's something fundamentally different between Kurosaki's spiritual pressure and the kid's.
Well, I don't think that's any reason to fuss about Mr. Kurosaki. Actually, there was another Soul Reaper with a similar nature.
Huh? Who was that?
Though they're not strictly the same, there used to be someone who had the essence of a hollow, the powers of a Soul Reaper, and another different power all at once.
There used to be? So he's not around anymore?
Not on this side, anyway.
On this side?
I heard rumors that he assisted Mr. Kurosaki at Ryokyu. Do you happen to know about that? Well, I would think someone in your position would have seen his wanted posters at least.
You don't mean...
After all, it seems that his cadaver rather than his konpaku was once taken to the Seirete. It would be odd if you hadn't heard of him actually. The substitute Soul Reaper Kugo Ginjo. Just how much do you know about him, Mr. Hisagi?